Hello, dear listeners, and welcome to Sleepy Science Teller, a calm little corner of the night where science whispers softly and curiosity drifts gently into dreams. Tonight, we'll explore something ancient, something that existed long before humans ever walked the earth. We'll discover how animals sense earthquakes and how, for millions of years, Earth itself has been speaking to them in signals we are only beginning to understand. Before we begin, I'd love to know where you are listening from tonight. What part of the world cradles you under its stars? And what time is it there as you listen? You can share your location and time softly down below in the comments. And if you enjoy these gentle journeys into science and sleep, please take a quiet moment to like this video and subscribe. It helps this little channel grow, and it lets more dreamers find peace through curiosity. Long before our modern cities stood tall, before our satellites spun silently in orbit, and before a single seismograph etched its first trembling line on paper, Earth already had its watchers. Not human, not mechanical, but living, breathing creatures scattered across oceans, forests, and deserts. They were Earth's first observers, the ones who listened to its whispers and responded instinctively to its moods. When we speak of nature's early warning system, we are not talking about alarms or digital sensors, but about the language of life itself. Each creature, each heartbeat in the great web of nature is tuned to the rhythm of the planet beneath it. When the ground begins to shift, when the deep layers of rock start to strain and move, the signs do not go unnoticed. To the animals, it is as if the earth sighs, a subtle, invisible warning, moving quietly through the soil, the air, and the water. Scientists have noticed, and ancient people recorded it too, that moments, or sometimes hours, before an earthquake, animals behave strangely. Dogs howl, birds scatter, fish leap from rivers. Even insects sometimes vanish into hidden spaces. To them, something unseen is stirring. It's remarkable to think that these signals have existed for millions of years. Long before humans learned to read the ground's vibrations, long before instruments were born, nature has always spoken first, and animals, the planet's oldest inhabitants, have always listened. It's a system, not a technology, but of connection. Every species has evolved alongside Earth, learning its subtle signs, its patterns, its moods. A tiny tremor that passes unnoticed by humans might feel like a storm of motion to a creature closer to the ground. Think of it: an elephant sensing a distant quake through its feet, a frog in a pond feeling ripples before they are visible, a bird sensing the pressure of the air changing ever so slightly. Each one responds differently, but all share a single purpose: to stay alive, to move before danger arrives. This is a quiet genius of evolution, a built-in awareness that requires no thought, only instinct. It's as though the planet, in its wisdom, has given every living creature a thread of connection, tying them gently to its pulse. When humans eventually appeared, we became the first species to forget how to listen. We built walls, floors, and machines that hummed louder than the earth itself. But for the animals, for the ones who still live close to nature, that bond has never been broken. So, when the ground begins to murmur, when vibrations hum softly through the soil, they know, they feel the call of Earth's early warning system, and they move as they always have, guided not by logic, but by an ancient language of survival. If you travel back through history, you'll find stories written on temple walls, etched in scrolls, passed through generations, of animals behaving mysteriously before earthquakes. In ancient Greece, historians noted that snakes slithered out of their holes and frogs abandoned ponds, days before great tremors. In Japan, there are tales of catfish, sacred creatures of the rivers, thrashing wildly before the ground shook. The people believed these fish were warning them, feeling the earth's unrest deep below. Across China, in the city of Haicheng in 1975, scientists recorded something extraordinary. Dogs barked relentlessly. Horses refused to enter stables. Rats and snakes fled their hiding places. These strange behaviors were so widespread, so consistent, that officials decided to evacuate the city. Hours later, an earthquake struck. Because of the evacuation, thousands of lives were saved. Was it luck, coincidence, or something deeper? A reminder that nature still speaks. If we choose to listen, modern science often tries to explain such things in measurable terms. Perhaps the animals sense vibrations, too subtle for our instruments. Perhaps they detect changes in magnetic fields, in gases, or in the tension of the ground. Whatever the reason, their senses remain sharper, more anciently tuned than ours. It's humbling, isn't it, to realize that before we built our systems of warning, nature already had its own, and it worked beautifully. Imagine the ancient earth, mountains trembling in the distance, forests rippling as flocks of birds rise suddenly into the air, elephants moving in long lines across the plains, guided by something unseen. It is a dance of instinct, a choreography that has played out countless times since life first began, and every time it begins quietly with a feeling, a vibration, a hush in the air. The earth sends out its message, and its oldest children answer. Today, scientists are still decoding this ancient language. What exactly do animals sense that alerts them to an oncoming quake? Some researchers believe the answer lies in P waves, the first, faint vibrations that travel faster than the destructive waves we usually feel. Humans rarely notice them, but animals, with their more sensitive senses, react immediately. Others think animals detect changes in groundwater, as rocks shift and release tiny amounts of gases like radon, altering the chemistry of the soil and the air. Birds might feel changes in atmospheric pressure. Fish might sense minute electrical signals, or disturbances in the magnetic field. Each species, in its own way, interprets the planet's early whispers. This sensitivity isn't new. It's the product of millions of years of evolution, from the smallest ant to the largest whale. Every creature is a living sensor, crafted by time to survive. Where humans built tools to measure the earth, animals became those tools, their bodies and instincts refined to read the world around them. Consider for a moment the beauty of that design. No batteries, no wires, no calibration, only life, listening. It reminds us that science is not just about discovery, it's about remembering. Remembering that the answers we seek are often written in the rhythms of nature itself. The earth doesn't keep secrets. It simply speaks in ways we've forgotten how to hear. So as you listen now, perhaps lying quietly in bed, imagine the stillness before an ancient earthquake, the air heavy and hushed, the animals alert, the forest whispering in the language of tremors. It's a moment where instinct and survival intertwine, and the entire living world pauses. To listen, that, dear listener, is nature's early warning system, a reminder that before humans measured the earth, life itself already understood it. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine the world beneath you, far below the soft soil and roots. Deeper than any cave or tunnel lies a restless layer, a realm of pressure, heat, and motion. The ground beneath us is never truly still, even when we feel calm at the surface. The Earth's crust, that thin, fragile skin we live upon, is constantly shifting, stretching, and breathing. Slowly, silently, its plates move against one another, sometimes gliding, sometimes locking in tension. And when that tension becomes too great, the earth releases it in a trembling sigh we call an earthquake. But long before the first jolt reaches our feet, something else begins. A whisper of movement, tiny vibrations, rippling invisibly through layers of rock and soil. They are so faint that we, in our noisy world, rarely notice. But animals, to the quiet listeners of the earth, these tremors speak volumes. Scientists call them P waves, primary waves, the first travelers from a quake's origin. They move faster than sound, through the heart of the planet, arriving seconds, sometimes minutes, before the destructive shaking we humans feel. For an elephant, a cat, a bird perched lightly on a branch, these P waves are like whispers through their bones. They feel the faint quiver of the world below, and something deep within them responds, an instinct older than memory, telling them to move, to flee, to seek safety. It's almost poetic that the first messenger of an earthquake is not the rumble we hear, but the silent rhythm we cannot, a signal passed softly through the ground, unheard by humans, but deeply felt by the living earth itself. And perhaps that's why animals react so quickly, not because they know what's coming, but because they feel it, an ancient recognition of the earth's sigh, echoing through their bodies like a distant heartbeat. To truly understand how animals sense earthquakes, we must listen closely to the language of vibrations. It's a quiet conversation that begins deep within the earth's crust, a story told not in words, but in waves. When an earthquake begins, two kinds of waves are born: P waves, which move fastest, and S waves, which follow behind. P waves travel through both rock and liquid, compressing and stretching material as they pass. They're subtle, almost ghostly, a pulse that feels more like a pressure change in motion. S waves, on the other hand, are slower but stronger. They move side to side, shaking the ground in a way that buildings and humans can finally feel. By the time S waves arrive, the world above is already quivering, and the gentle warning of the P wave has passed. For us, that brief moment is lost. But for animals, that gap between the two waves is everything. It's their window, their few seconds or minutes to respond. Imagine a herd of deer in a valley. The earth sends out its first faint tremor, barely a murmur. The deer lift their heads, ears twitching, bodies tense. The second wave has not yet come, but they are already moving, instinct guiding them away from danger. In another part of the world, a school of fish stirs suddenly in the water, their sleek bodies turning sharply in unison. They sense the P wave as a faint pressure shift, a compression in the water that no human could measure unaided. And like the deer, they move before the quake even reaches them. In a forest canopy, birds suddenly take flight, their wings slicing the air as they rise into a gray, trembling sky. They feel the vibration through the branches, the subtle change in the air pressure. Their departure looks chaotic, but it's not. It's ancient coordination, written in their genes. These vibrations, this silent language, has existed since the dawn of the planet, and in its rhythm, animals have found their survival. When you think about it, the earth itself is like a musician, and the vibrations are its song, a deep, low melody, unheard but ever present. And animals, they are the ones who still remember how to dance to it. Now let's journey deeper, into the hidden layers of the earth. Beneath the crust where we live lies the mantle, a vast ocean of solid rock that flows ever so slowly, like thick honey under pressure. Here, heat from the core rises upward, driving the slow movement of tectonic plates. It's these movements, gentle over centuries, violent in moments, that create earthquakes. When two plates press against each other, they bend and twist, storing tension like a drawn bowstring. And when that tension finally releases, energy radiates outward as waves. Vibrations move through rock, through soil, through every living thing standing above. We feel only the surface shock, but for animals, the entire world becomes alive with motion. Their paws, their feet, their bodies are like finely tuned instruments, built to detect the subtlest hum of the earth. Take the humble mole, burrowed deep in the ground. Long before an earthquake, it might stop digging, its tiny whiskers trembling. The soil around it has changed, a shift in tension, a subtle vibration that only a creature so close to the earth could sense. Or picture a herd of elephants miles away, standing on open plains. The first P wave travels silently beneath them. Their trunks touch the ground, their large feet press gently into the soil. They sense it, a ripple passing through the earth like a pulse beneath their skin. They rumble softly to each other, low, distant sounds, and begin to move. Science, of course, continues to study this mystery. We've built seismographs, supercomputers, and networks of sensors to track the planet's vibrations. But sometimes, the simplest truth remains. The creatures who live closest to ground are still the best listeners. Every vibration, every tremor is a story of energy and connection. From the deep heart of the planet to the soft pads of an animal's feet, it's a language we once knew, and perhaps, in quiet moments, still remember. The vibrations beneath the earth remind us that we are not separate from it. We are part of its movement, its rhythm, its breath. And when animals sense those hidden waves, they are not predicting the future. They are simply listening to a song the earth has always sung. When you close your eyes, you can still feel the world around you, the faint brush of air against your skin, the quiet hum of distant sounds, the rhythm of your own heartbeat echoing softly in your chest. Now, imagine living in a world where every one of those sensations was 1,000 times sharper, where each vibration, each whisper of air carried meaning, where survival depended not on sight or reason, but on sensitivity. That, dear listener, is the world of animals. For them, senses are not just tools. They are lifelines, finely tuned instruments, crafted by evolution to read the language of the planet. Every sense, from hearing to touch, from smell to magnetism, has evolved to feel the earth in ways that go far beyond what we can imagine. When we speak of animals sensing earthquakes, we often imagine it as something supernatural, something mysterious or mystical. But in truth, it is simply sensitivity, a deeper awareness of the world's small details. Where humans rely on technology to measure tremors, animals rely on their bodies. Some feel the tiniest vibrations through the ground, the kind that even our most precise instruments barely detect. Others sense changes in air pressure, in magnetic fields, or even in the composition of gases in the air. To us, these are invisible, inaudible things, but to them, they are part of daily life. Think of a cat sleeping on a windowsill. Its eyes are closed, its body still, but its whiskers, those delicate, thread-like hairs, are always alert. Each whisker can detect the slightest change in air currents. If the ground vibrates even faintly, those whiskers tremble, sending signals through nerves so sensitive they can feel a change smaller than the width of a human hair. Now imagine that same sensitivity spread across an entire ecosystem. The elephant with its seismic feet, the bird that feels the pressure drop before a storm, the fish that senses ripples deep below the surface. Together, they form a symphony of awareness, each one listening, each one connected. To understand the sensitivity of senses is to understand the art of perception. It's not just about detecting sound or vibration, but about interpreting it, feeling what it means. An animal does not just hear, it feels sound. It does not just sense movement, it knows change is coming. In this way, they live within a hidden layer of the world, a layer of subtle energy and motion that humans have long forgotten how to feel. We, too, once lived by those instincts. Long ago, before technology and cities, our ancestors could sense the world in ways that now feel distant. They listened to the rustle of leaves, the trembling of the ground beneath bare feet. But over time, we built walls and closed ourselves away from the planet's quiet pulse. Animals never lost that connection. They remain part of the living circuit, of the Earth's sensations. Their bodies are tuned to hear what we cannot, to feel what we overlook. When an earthquake begins, they are the first to know, not because they think, but because they feel. Their senses whisper, something is moving, something has changed, and that whisper is enough. Let's wander now, softly, into the science behind this ancient sensitivity. Every animal, from the smallest ant to the mightiest elephant, has its own unique sensory design, a collection of biological tools shaped by its environment. Take the inner ear. For instance, in mammals, it doesn't just help with hearing. It's also a delicate balance organ. It detects motion and acceleration through tiny crystals and hair-like structures inside. When the ground trembles, even slightly, these sensors respond instantly. A small tremor that we might call imperceptible is, to an animal, a clear message. Fish and amphibians living in water have a structure called the lateral line, a row of tiny sensory pores along their sides. These pores sense vibrations and pressure waves that travel through water far faster than through air. If a single pebble drops into a pond, a fish can feel it from meters away. Now imagine what happens when a distant earthquake sends ripples through the seabed. The fish feel it long before it reaches the surface. Many animals can detect infrasound, sounds so low in frequency that humans can't hear them. These frequencies often occur during quakes, storms, or volcanic movements. Elephants, whales, and even some birds can sense these deep tones, using them as a warning. Then there are the subtle electrical and magnetic senses. Some animals, like pigeons and sharks, navigate the world using the planet's magnetic field. When seismic activity disturbs that field, their orientation shifts. They become restless, confused, as though the map of their world has suddenly moved. The beauty of these senses lies not only in their sharpness, but in how they work together. When the ground changes, when the pressure drops, when the air itself feels different, animals interpret all these cues at once. Their brains weave the information into an instinctive understanding, one that tells them when to stay and when to flee. Imagine a small village in Japan. Centuries ago, people noticed the dogs pacing, the horses pulling at their ropes, the birds leaving the trees. They cannot explain it, but they trust what they see. Hours later, the earth shakes violently. For those who paid attention, the animal's senses were the first warning, a biological alarm system far older than science. Today, researchers are trying to recreate that system with sensors that mimic these sensitivities, networks of underground microphones, pressure gauges, and magnetic detectors are all inspired by nature's designs. Yet, even with modern tools, our machines still fall short of the sensitivity found in the simplest creature, a small crab, feeling vibrations through its legs, can sense the approach of a predator, or an earthquake with astonishing precision. A bird, resting lightly on a branch, can feel the air's tension shift. As deep ground forces begin to move, their entire existence depends on feeling the faintest signal and trusting it. We might call it instinct, but in truth, it is a highly evolved science, a sensory intelligence we are only beginning to rediscover. When you think about it, the world of animals is not just sharper, it's richer. Every sound, every vibration, every change in light or air paints a story in their perception. A spider, waiting in its web, feels the slightest tremor from across the threads. It can tell the difference between a falling leaf and the footsteps of a beetle. To us, those signals would be nothing, just silence. But to the spider, they are language. A rabbit feels vibrations through its feet, long before hearing a predator's approach. A whale senses pressure changes across miles of water. A bat listens to echoes so faint they bounce off a single strand of hair. Every species carries within it a different way of listening to the world. And when the earth speaks, through tremors, through whispers of movement deep below, they hear it first. To them, the earth is not distant or still. It's alive, breathing, vibrating softly beneath their skin. This deep connection reminds us that the planet is not something separate from life. It's part of life, woven into the senses of every creature that walks upon it. Perhaps, if we learn again to listen, to feel the air on our skin, the hum of the ground beneath us, the shifting of the wind before a storm, we might begin to sense what animals still know, that the earth is never silent, that every vibration is a message, that every tremor is part of a vast living conversation. When animals sense an earthquake coming, they are not reading the future. They are simply tuned to the present moment, to the living rhythm of the world. And in that still, ancient awareness lies the true sensitivity of senses. In the golden quiet of dawn across the vast African plains, an elephant stands still. Its heavy form rises gently above the mist, ears slowly fanning the cool air, trunk resting softly against the ground. To an onlooker, it may seem peaceful, perhaps even still, but inside that moment, something extraordinary is happening. The elephant is listening, not with its ears alone, but with its body, its bones, and even the soles of its massive feet. You see, elephants possess one of the most remarkable sensory abilities found in any living creature. They can hear the earth itself. While humans hear sound of the air, the laughter of wind, the chirp of birds, elephants sense frequencies that travel through the ground. These are known as low-frequency sounds, or infrasound, vibrations so deep that we cannot hear them. For humans, sound is limited, roughly between 20 and 20,000 hertz. But elephants can detect frequencies as low as 5 hertz. That's far below our perception. Deep, rumbling tones that roll through the earth rather than across it. These low vibrations can travel for miles, far beyond the reach of normal sound. A herd of elephants might communicate across a distance of 10 kilometers, their calls unheard by us, yet perfectly clear to one another. When they stomp the ground or rumble softly in their chests, those sounds pass through the soil, and other elephants miles away can feel them like whispers through the bones of the world. Now imagine what happens when the earth itself begins to tremble, when tectonic energy builds deep below, and a faint pulse of vibration begins to spread outward. To the elephant, it's as though the ground speaks. It's familiar, but different. The vibration isn't from a distant herd, nor from a thunderstorm rolling through the horizon. It's from beneath, from the deep pulse of the earth's own shifting layers. And so, even before humans notice the faintest tremor, elephants pause. They listen. They tilt their heads, shift their feet, and sometimes they move away. It's instinct, old, wise, and deeply woven into their being. Over countless generations, the sensitivity to the ground's language has kept them safe, guiding them away from danger, toward open plains, and sometimes even toward higher ground when disaster loomed. Soft pause. There's a certain beauty in this quiet intelligence. While humans build machines to detect earthquakes, elephants simply feel them. Their lives are built around a harmony with the planet, a rhythm so deep that their hearts seem to beat in time with the earth itself. Let's drift deeper now into the science of how elephants sense these low frequencies. Inside their large, padded feet lies a web of nerve endings so sensitive it can detect vibrations finer than a fraction of a millimeter. Each step, they take send signals up through their bones, through the legs, the shoulders, and finally into the inner ear. This process, called seismic communication, is one of nature's most refined systems. The structure of an elephant's skull and bones helps too. Their enormous size isn't just for strength. It amplifies vibration. Think of it as nature's built-in tuning fork, resonating with the slightest tremor in the ground. Researchers studying wild elephants in Kenya once placed sensors in the soil near watering holes. They played recordings of low-frequency rumbles, the kind elephants use to communicate. To their amazement, distant herds reacted, pausing mid-step, turning their heads, and even responding with rumbles of their own. They weren't hearing the sound through the air. They were feeling it through the ground beneath them. This ability doesn't stop at communication. It extends to awareness of storms approaching, of distant thunder rolling across the savannah, And yes, of earthquakes beginning far away, when the ground begins to vibrate in unusual ways. Even long before the quake reaches the surface, elephants may sense it. They might grow uneasy, shift their stance, or begin moving towards safer ground. There are many stories told by rangers and villagers, stories of elephants who left their usual paths hours before an earthquake struck. In 2004, before the devastating Indian Ocean quake and tsunami, elephants in parts of Thailand moved inland. They refused to carry tourists to the beach that morning. Soon after, the sea pulled back and tragedy followed. Yet the elephants, far from the coast, were unharmed. Was it coincidence or something deeper? Scientists still study that question, but the timing, again and again, suggests that these creatures felt something long before instruments did. Soft, slow breath. In the grand orchestra of nature, elephants are the bass, their world filled with deep tones that we can't hear, but that they understand perfectly. Their low rumbles, their careful stillness, their subtle shifts, they're all part of a language that transcends sound, a language of vibration and feeling. And when the earth speaks, they are among the first to listen. Let's wander, now, to the edges of the forests and plains where elephants walk in silence. You can almost hear it, the soft rustle of grass, the slow rhythm of their breath, the distant hum of the world beneath their feet. There's something deeply ancient about the way elephants move. Their awareness isn't rushed. It isn't distracted. It's grounded, steady, and attuned to everything around them. Their relationship with the earth is one of mutual respect. They shape the land with their steps, create pathways through the wild, and in return, the land tells them its secrets. When danger brews, a storm, a flood, a tremor, the earth warns them first. Some scientists now believe elephants could one day help us predict earthquakes. By monitoring their movements and behavioral changes, we might learn to interpret the same signals they feel naturally. It's as though the elephants are translators, converting the hidden voice of the earth into motion, warning, and survival. Imagine that. Technology inspired not by machines, but by animals who've lived in tune with the planet for millions of years. In a gentle way, elephants remind us of something we've almost forgotten, that to truly understand the world, we must learn to listen deeply, not just with ears, but with attention, with stillness, with the patience to feel. Their story isn't just about survival, it's about connection, a connection that once belonged to all living things. When we too walk softly on the earth, listening to its quiet pulse beneath our feet, pause, gentle exhale. So next time you see an elephant, in a picture, or perhaps in the calm stretch of your imagination, think of the world they hear. A world filled not with noise, but with subtle rhythms, low murmurs, and the endless heartbeat of a living planet. And perhaps, if you listen closely enough, you might feel it too. High above the trees, where the air grows thin, and the clouds drift like slow thoughts, birds move with grace and purpose. Each wing beat, each glide, is part of a silent dialogue between the creature and the sky. They do not just see the world from above, they feel it. Before humans ever dreamed of flight, birds are the masters of the atmosphere. They have learned its language, the pressure of air, the density of clouds, the invisible waves that move long before storms. And yes, even before earthquakes. Atmospheric pressure, the weight of air pressing upon the earth, constantly changes, sometimes slowly, sometimes sharply. When tectonic plates shift deep underground, they release subtle energy. That energy doesn't only move through the soil, it ripples upward, disrupting the air above in faint, almost imperceptible ways. Humans can't sense this, but birds can. Their bodies are designed to live within these invisible currents, to feel the slightest difference in wind, the gentlest shift in pressure. To a bird, the air is not just space, it's information, a living, breathing environment full of signs and whispers. In Japan, China, and parts of Italy, people have observed strange patterns in bird behavior before earthquakes. Sparrows flying erratically, pigeons refusing to land, and migratory flocks changing direction suddenly. Even pet parrots, safe in cages, have been known to grow restless hours before quake strikes. To scientists, this has long been a mystery, but slowly, the pieces are coming together. It seems that when the ground begins to tremble deep below, the air above responds. Tiny changes in electromagnetic fields and air pressure reach the surface long before humans feel a thing. And the birds, with their delicate inner ears, hollow bones, and lightweight bodies, notice these changes first. It's as if the sky itself tells them, something beneath is moving. Prepare to fly. Soft pause. Their connection with the air runs deeper than we can imagine. Birds don't just see the world, they read it. Every gust, every breeze, every soft pressure shift is a word in the language of the atmosphere. And when the world below begins to change, they are the first to listen. Let's drift higher now, into the science behind this graceful awareness. Inside every bird lies a built-in pressure sensor, a tiny yet remarkable organ within their inner ear known as the paratympanic organ. It helps them detect even the faintest change in atmospheric pressure. When the air grows heavier or lighter, they feel it instantly. This sensitivity allows birds to predict storms, to know when rain will fall or when strong winds will rise. But it may also help them detect deeper, stranger signals. When an earthquake is about to occur, the ground releases low-frequency sound waves and electromagnetic pulses. These pulses ripple upward, disturbing the charged particles in the air. For humans, this is invisible, but for birds, it's as if the world itself shifts slightly beneath their wings. In one study near L'Aquila, Italy, researchers observed colonies of European robins and swallows becoming unusually active before a major quake. The birds left their roosts at night, something they never do, and disappeared from the area hours before the tremors began. No weather pattern explained it. No predator frightened them. Only the earth itself seemed to whisper, "Move now." There's something almost poetic in that, a harmony between sky and soil. When the earth moves, the air responds, and the birds, ever alert to the breath of wind, are the first to sense that something has changed. It's this sensitivity that makes them natural barometers, living instruments of the sky. Before a storm, birds often fly lower, because air pressure drops and makes flight more difficult. Before an earthquake, they may do the opposite, rising suddenly or leaving altogether. The ancient Romans noticed this. They believed birds could foresee natural disasters. Even their word for augury, reading the signs from birds, comes from this ancient observation. Perhaps, without knowing it, they had witnessed real atmospheric changes that birds responded to long before science gave us an explanation. Gentle breath, a moment of stillness. When you see a bird rising suddenly into the sky, it might not just be flight. It might be awareness, instinct, and the quiet intelligence of a creature tuned to the whispers of the wind. Now imagine A vast stretch of coastline, the sun dipping low over the sea, the air still and warm. High above, seagulls cry softly as they ride the wind. Then, without warning, they begin to change direction. One, then two, then dozens. They fly inland, away from the coast, their movements urgent but graceful. Hours later, the ground trembles. Far beneath the ocean floor, the earth has shifted, and the sea begins to rise. This isn't just a story. It happened before the great Indian Ocean tsunami of 2004. Survivors spoke of seabirds fleeing the beaches hours before the waves arrived. Even inland, farmers noticed strange silences. The songs of birds vanished. The air grew heavy, and a stillness settled, as if the sky itself was holding its breath. Birds had felt what we could not. The atmospheric pressure above the ocean had changed ever so slightly, the earliest sign of what was coming. And in their instinctive wisdom, they responded long before technology could. There's a certain peace in this understanding that the world gives warnings, soft and quiet ones, for those who know how to listen. Birds remind us that not all intelligence is loud. Some of it is quiet, intuitive, and deeply connected to the world itself. Their wings carry not only their bodies, but also the memory of ancient rhythms, of the earth's breath, of storms and tremors, and the pulse of life that binds everything together. When we look to the sky and see a flock in motion, we might think of beauty, of freedom, of grace. But perhaps we should also think of awareness, a living radar that has existed since long before humans walked the earth. In their silent departures, their sudden changes in flight, their restless calls before a quake, birds are telling a story, the story of the air, and the story of the ground beneath it. Long, soft pause, and as the world falls quiet at night, the birds settle, tucked beneath leaves and branches, their tiny hearts still tuned to the breath of the sky. They will hear it again when it changes, the soft whisper of the atmosphere, the sky's subtle warning, that something deep below has begun to move once more. Beneath the calm blue surface of the sea, a different world exists, a world without wind or footsteps, where light drifts slowly through the depths, and sound becomes a language of life. In this silent realm, every ripple, every current, every vibration carries meaning. Fish, unlike us, do not rely on sight alone. They live inside a world of motion, a world where the faintest tremor can tell a story, and where the earth's quiet murmurs can be felt through the skin itself. When earthquakes occur beneath the ocean floor, they send shock waves through water, low, rolling vibrations that spread far and wide. Even before the main tremor reaches the surface, these underwater signals move outward, like ripples expanding from a single point. For fish, these are not invisible. They are real, tangible, and instantly recognizable. You see, fish possess a remarkable sensory system called a lateral line. It runs along each side of their body, a delicate chain of tiny receptors capable of detecting motion and vibration in the surrounding water. With it, they can sense approaching predators, nearby movement, and even subtle changes in water pressure, the kind that occur long before an earthquake strikes. Imagine the feeling of being surrounded by an invisible sea of signals. For humans, that might be overwhelming, but for fish, it's natural, a way of perceiving their environment not through sound or sight, but through feeling. It's believed that long before humans built seismographs, fish were already aware of the planet's tremors. When deep-sea quakes begin, fish often move towards safer zones, away from unstable seafloors, toward calmer waters. In some regions, fishermen have long noticed that schools of fish vanish before major earthquakes. To them, it was a mystery, but nature had simply whispered early, and the fish had listened. Soft pause, gentle breath. Down here, sound moves faster and farther than in air. The ocean is a perfect carrier of vibration, a vast, fluid network that connects every creature. In this network, nothing truly goes unheard. From whales to plankton, from coral to fish, each being feels the earth's quiet stirrings. Before humans, the oceans already knew how to listen. Let's float deeper now, into the science behind how fish sense these watery whispers. The lateral line system is a marvel of evolution. Tiny pores run along the fish's body, each containing sensory cells called neuromasts. These cells detect movement and vibration in the surrounding water, translating pressure changes into electrical signals, signals that travel to the brain almost instantly. This means that a fish doesn't just swim through water, it swims with it. Every wave, every motion, every faint vibration is felt like a soft brush against its skin. When the seafloor shifts, the pressure waves move upward. They change the motion of the water, sometimes subtly, sometimes powerfully, even before humans feel a quake. Fish sense this change as an unfamiliar rhythm, a new vibration unlike the natural pulse of tides or currents. In Japan, researchers have long studied the strange behavior of fish before earthquakes. Carp swimming in circles, deep-sea species suddenly appearing in shallow water, schools scattering without cause. In 2011, before the devastating Tohoku earthquake, fishermen along the coast reported unusual catches. Rare deep-sea fish, like oarfish and ribbonfish, coming close to shore days before the quake struck. To scientists, this raised an astonishing possibility. That fish, especially those living near fault lines, might be reacting to changes in the Earth's magnetic and seismic energy beneath the ocean. You see, vibrations from an earthquake are not just mechanical. They can also disturb the magnetic field around them. Many marine animals, including certain fish, are sensitive to electromagnetic changes. When these invisible fields shift, their navigation instincts are disrupted. They become restless, disoriented, and sometimes flee from the area entirely. It's as if they can feel the earth preparing to move, long before the first tremor reaches the surface. Soft pause, the sense of wonder. The ocean, in this way, becomes a mirror of the planet's pulse. Each vibration travels outward, carried gently by the water, touching the senses of every creature in its path. For fish, survival depends on listening, not to sound as we know it, but to the flow, the pressure, the pulse. Their world is one of constant communication, and when the language of the sea changes, they understand immediately that something is wrong. Now imagine yourself floating beneath the waves, the world above fading into soft blue shadows. All around you, the water is calm, until suddenly a faint vibration rolls through it, deep and low, like a slow heartbeat. The fish nearby feel it too. They move in unison, their bodies aligning instinctively, their motions silent yet purposeful. It's as though they received a signal, a call to safety whispered through the ocean floor. The sea at that moment is alive with invisible energy, but to those who live within it, it's not frightening. It's simply another form of knowledge. Across coastal villages and islands, Fishermen have long told stories of fish disappearing before great quakes and tsunamis. Days before disaster, the nets come up empty, the sea grows strangely quiet, and the usual rhythm of life changes. To them, it's a warning, the kind that nature gives, softly but clearly, to those who still know how to listen. Even coral reefs, those delicate living structures, react to underwater vibrations. Their polyps close, their colors dim, as though bracing for change. Everything in the ocean, from the smallest shrimp to the largest whale, feels the earth's pulse. And the fish, those ancient wanderers of the deep, carry that awareness in every movement. In a way, they are the ocean's messengers. Their behavior tells a story of what the planet is feeling beneath. Before humans could measure, before machines could record, fish already understood. Through instinct, through evolution, through the rhythm of survival, gentle closing tone. So when you watch fish swimming quietly in an aquarium, or imagine them gliding through the vast blue wild, remember that they live within a constant symphony of motion. They hear the world not with ears, but with their entire bodies, feeling every ripple, every whisper, and every subtle change in the deep. Long before humans, fish were listening to the earth, and in their quiet, fluid dance, they still are, reminding us that even in the stillest waters, the planet speaks, and life listens. In the still hours before dawn, when the world feels quiet and half asleep, dogs sometimes bark at nothing, cats freeze in place, ears twitching, eyes wide, as if they've heard something we cannot. To most of us, it's easy to dismiss, perhaps a car outside, or a small animal moving in the dark. But sometimes that strange alertness, that restless unease, happens just hours before the ground begins to tremble. Long before humans invented seismographs, animals, especially dogs and cats, seemed to know when the earth was about to move. Their reactions, pacing, whining, hiding, or running aimlessly, have been recorded throughout history, from ancient China to modern Japan, from the villages of Greece to the plains of India. In 373 BC, Greek historians wrote of rats, snakes, and dogs fleeing the city of Helike, days before it was destroyed by an earthquake. In Japan, stories tell of pets refusing to enter homes, barking wildly, only for the ground to shake hours later. Even today, pet owners across the world share accounts of unusual behavior. Dogs scratching at doors to escape, cats disappearing under beds, birds fluttering restlessly just before a quake arrives. But how? What do these animals sense that we cannot? The answer, scientists believe, lies deep within their instincts, a combination of heightened hearing, sensitivity to vibration, and perhaps something even more mysterious, something tied to the Earth's magnetic pulse. Dogs, for example, have been shown to detect frequencies far below and above human hearing. They can pick up on low-frequency rumbles, the kind produced by distant thunder, or by the deep, subterranean grinding that occurs just before an earthquake begins. Cats, too, are incredibly aware of subtle environmental changes. Their whiskers, or vibrissae, are fine-tuned sensors, able to feel the slightest shifts in air pressure or ground motion, even before a quake reaches the surface. These signals whisper through their fur, triggering a deep, primal awareness. To them, the silence before a quake isn't silence at all. It's a lie with tremors too faint for us to notice. A low, humming world that only they can hear. Pause, soft breath, soothing tone. There's something deeply humbling in that idea, that our loyal companions, who sit quietly by our feet each day, can sense the heartbeat of the planet itself. Long before our instruments blink red, their instincts awaken. Perhaps in their unease, they're trying to warn us, to tell us that something beneath our feet is stirring. Let's explore the gentle science behind this ancient mystery. Dogs have an extraordinary sense of hearing. They can detect sounds as low as 16 hertz, frequencies so deep that they feel more like vibrations than sound. When tectonic plates begin to shift underground, they produce low-frequency waves, the earliest rumblings of an earthquake, which travel faster through the ground than the quake itself. Dogs, lying close to the earth, may feel these signals long before humans do. Their paws are sensitive to subtle tremors, their inner ears more finely tuned than ours. Similarly, cats, with their delicate whiskers and balanced bodies, can detect both air and ground vibrations. They are natural observers, creatures of stillness and perception. Even the smallest change, a faint vibration, a shift in air density, registers as a warning. In scientific experiments, cats and dogs have been shown to respond to sound frequencies and vibrations that most humans cannot perceive at all. Some researchers believe that they may also react to changes in static electricity, which often builds up in the atmosphere before a quake, as the rocks underground compress and release charged particles. There's also the possibility of magnetic sensitivity. Studies in Germany and Japan observed that dogs tend to align their bodies along the north-south magnetic axis when relieving themselves, a subtle clue that they can detect the Earth's magnetic field. When that magnetic balance shifts, even slightly, dogs often react with confusion or anxiety. Before major quakes, the magnetic field near the fault line can fluctuate dramatically. To a dog, this might feel like a sudden distortion in their inner compass, something unnatural and unsettling. Combine all these senses, low-frequency hearing, vibration detection, and magnetic awareness, and it becomes clear that dogs and cats are natural detectors of change. They don't know an earthquake is coming in the human sense, but their bodies, evolved for alertness and survival, interpret these subtle signals as danger. And so they bark, hide, run, or seek comfort from their humans, instinctively try and protect themselves, and perhaps us too. Softly, reflective tone. There's a quiet beauty in that, in knowing that nature still speaks through them. Their fear isn't just noise. It's an echo of ancient knowledge, a biological memory of survival from times long before civilization began. Now imagine a quiet evening. You're sitting at home, the air calm, the world still. Your dog lifts its head suddenly, ears pricked. Your cat freezes mid-step, eyes wide, staring into nothing. You feel nothing, hear nothing, but they sense something deep, slow, and ancient beneath the ground. Moments like these have been recorded for centuries. In China, where the study of earthquake prediction has ancient roots, animals have been observed for generations. Before the 1975 Haicheng earthquake, villagers noticed strange behavior. Snakes emerging from their burrows in midwinter, dogs howling, horses refusing to move. The government took those signs seriously and evacuated people before the quake struck. It remains one of the few cases in history where an earthquake warning, based largely on animal behavior, saved thousands of lives. Even today, in some rural areas, People still watch their animals closely when the earth feels strange. Science continues to study these instincts, but part of the mystery remains beautifully unsolved. Perhaps the deeper truth is that these animals are not just reacting to physical changes, but to the energy of the earth itself. They live closer to the soil, to the pulse of the planet, their senses unclouded by noise and distraction. They listen constantly, not just with ears, but with their whole being. And maybe in our modern world, we've simply forgotten how. Pause, gentle and slow. When you think about it, dogs and cats are like tiny, living instruments, tuned perfectly to nature's frequencies. They remind us that long before we built devices, nature had already provided her own warning system, one made of fur, instinct, and heart. So the next time your dog growls at nothing, or your cat stares quietly at the wall, remember they might be hearing the earth whisper, not in words, but in vibrations, in rhythms too soft for us to know. They are, in their own way, guardians of the ground, companions who live halfway between the world of humans and the heartbeat of the earth. Soft closing tone. Before humans ever measured the planet's tremors, dogs and cats already felt them. They were nature's first listeners, the quiet sentinels of shifting ground, and they still are, reminding us gently that the earth always speaks, and life, when still enough, can always hear. Beneath our feet, there is another world, a place hidden from sunlight, where roots curl like sleeping fingers, and the soil breathes in silence. Here, deep within the ground, live creatures who know the earth more intimately than any of us. Before humans ever built homes or cities, these animals, reptiles, moles, snakes, and countless burrowers, already live with the heartbeat of the planet. To them, the ground is not solid. It is alive, constantly moving, vibrating, murmuring, breathing with quiet motion. When the earth shifts, they are the first to feel it, long before the surface trembles. A snake may uncoil from its den. A lizard may pause. A mole may tunnel toward the surface. To them, these signs are not mystery. They are warnings carried through the soil. In ancient cultures, people noticed that snakes and burrowing creatures behaved strangely before earthquakes. In China, Japan, and India, stories passed down for generations spoke of snakes leaving their burrows in winter, lizards climbing to higher ground, and frogs vanishing from ponds. Each story carried a simple truth, that the animals of the earth sense what lies beneath, far sooner than we do. How do they know? The answer begins deep underground, where vibrations travel faster and farther, where even the smallest tremor becomes a thunderous wave of feeling. Reptiles and burrowing animals are masters of this hidden realm. Their bodies are pressed against the soil, their lives dependent on its stability. When that stability changes, they notice instantly. For example, snakes have scales and skin that are highly sensitive to vibration. They can feel the faintest movement through the ground, a natural radar that warns them of both prey and danger. Before an earthquake, these subtle vibrations increase, small shifts that might go unnoticed by us, but feel like deep rumbles to a creature lying close to the earth. Moles and groundhogs, too, have evolved to live by touch and vibration. Their tunnel systems act like amplifiers, carrying every tremor straight to their bodies. When an earthquake begins miles below, they feel it as an unsettling hum in the soil, a whisper that tells them the ground itself is no longer still. Soft pause, gentle breath. To imagine their world is to imagine being inside the Earth's skin, to feel every shift, every pulse, not as noise but as sensation. For them, the Earth is not silent. It's alive, always speaking through motion. Let's go deeper now, into the instinct that guides these quiet beings. Reptiles, such as snakes and lizards, are cold-blooded. Their survival depends on temperature, on the warmth of rocks, on the coolness of the soil. This makes them incredibly sensitive to environmental changes, not only temperature, but pressure, humidity, and vibration. When the tectonic plates shift deep below, they produce not only tremors, but subtle waves of heat and shifts in magnetic fields. Snakes and lizards, tuned to these invisible changes, often react long before the quake reaches the surface. There have been reports, especially from regions like China and Japan, of snakes appearing in large numbers before earthquakes, even emerging from frozen ground in winter, as if driven by something deeper than instinct. Scientists studying these events believe the reptiles were responding to vibrations and magnetic disturbances caused by the movement of the fault line below. Burrowing animals, on the other hand, are creatures of touch. Their world is defined by texture and movement. Moles, ground squirrels, rabbits, they feel sound through the soil itself. Every step, every rumble above them, is magnified through their tunnels. When the earth begins to shift, their homes become uneasy places, walls that move, ceilings that tremble. Some animals will abandon their burrows entirely before a quake, surfacing hours or even days before the event. Others freeze, their instincts telling them to stay perfectly still. It's an extraordinary network of natural alertness, a kind of biological seismograph that operates without machines, without electricity, just through pure sensory awareness. There is even a study from the Chinese Academy of Sciences documenting how snakes reacted to artificial vibrations that mimicked earthquake patterns. Even tiny shifts caused the snakes to move away from their shelters, coiling and retreating in visible distress. The study suggested that snakes could detect quakes from more than 100 kilometers away. Soft, reflective tone. Think about that for a moment. To us, the earth feels solid. To them, it's a living network of signals. Every vibration carries meaning, a warning, a rhythm, a call to safety. They do not think as we do. They simply know. Their connection to the earth is not conscious. It is instinctive, unbroken, and ancient. Before humans named the tremors earthquakes, these creatures already lived with them, not as disasters, but as part of the natural language of the planet. Now imagine the calm before an earthquake. The world still, the air unusually heavy. The ground beneath seems ordinary, but beneath that thin surface, the earth is preparing to move. In the quiet, snakes begin to stir in their dens. Lizards shift their position, heads lifted, bodies tense. Moles pause in their tunnels, listening to a soundless vibration that tells them something deep is changing. These are the sentinels of the soil, nature's hidden guardians, who live closer to the earth's pulse than any other. In many cultures, people once believed snakes were sacred messengers of the underworld. They seemed to rise from the earth with warnings, and perhaps in a way they truly did. Their sensitivity to movement, their attunement to the magnetic and thermal rhythms of the ground, make them extraordinary indicators of seismic activity. Where humans rely on data, they rely on feeling. There are stories from India where farmers notice sudden migrations of snakes across fields. only for earthquakes to follow days later. In Japan, temple caretakers once observed frogs and lizards fleeing ponds, hours before major tremors. And in Peru, burrowing owls have been seen leaving their nests, flying low across the desert in eerie silence, just before the earth shook. These accounts, though anecdotal, carry a remarkable pattern, a pattern that science continues to study with awe. Soft pause, a faint hum of warmth and tone. Perhaps we might see these creatures differently, not just as small or simple animals, but as beings deeply connected to the earth itself. They live within it, feel its moods, and understand its language. To watch a snake move across the ground is to see the earth's motion reflected, a silent, fluid dance that mirrors the planet's energy. When the ground shifts, so too do they, as if moved by the same force that moves continents. There's something poetic about that, something quietly comforting. It reminds us that the earth does not keep its secrets from life. It shares them, softly, continuously, through the senses of its creatures. And before humans ever existed, before seismographs and satellites, reptiles and burrowing animals were already listening. They were the first to know. When the earth's steady breath began to tremble, they were the watchers beneath the soil, the keepers of ancient knowledge, the silent witnesses to the restless planet we call home. So when you see a snake basking in the sun, or a small burrow in the garden's edge, remember, beneath that stillness lies a world forever connected to the earth's heart, a world that listens, feels, and warns, just as it has for millions of years. Before humans learned to measure the earth, these creatures already knew how to feel it. For centuries, people have watched animals move strangely before earthquakes, dogs barking for no reason, fish disappearing from nets, snakes slithering from the cold ground in midwinter. To villagers and travelers, these signs were not superstition. They were warnings, passed down quietly through generations. But as human civilization grew, as science replaced myth, the question lingered like a whisper in the dark. Could animals really sense earthquakes before they happen? Scientists, intrigued by these ancient tales, began to seek proof. And so began a long, patient journey, a bridge between folklore and physics, between the instinct of nature and the instruments of man. In the 1970s, a series of unusual events drew global attention. In China, researchers have been observing animal behavior for years. Dogs, cattle, and snakes all showed strange restlessness before certain tremors. Then came the Haiching earthquake in 1975. Days before it struck, locals reported odd behavior in their animals. Snakes left their burrows. Dogs refused food. Horses reared and bolted without reason. Authorities, taking these reports seriously, ordered evacuations. When the earthquake hit, magnitude 7.3, thousands of lives were saved. It was one of the first documented cases where animal behavior directly led to disaster prevention. The world took notice. But science, careful and questioning, wanted more than stories. Researchers began studying what animals might actually sense. Could they detect vibrations that precede an earthquake? The faint P waves, which move faster through the ground than the more destructive S waves. These P waves are subtle, barely felt by humans, but they carry deep information about what's coming next. If animals could sense these waves, that would explain much of their mysterious foresight. Experiments soon followed. In Japan, researchers exposed rodents, dogs, and birds to artificial vibrations. mimicking early earthquake waves. In nearly every case, the animals reacted before the human subjects even noticed a thing, becoming restless, moving away, or freezing in alertness. The results were astonishing, yet still difficult to prove on a large scale. After all, animal behavior can change for many reasons: weather, sounds, hunger, fear. To isolate earthquakes as the single cause required precision beyond what early studies could achieve. But one truth began to shimmer through. Animals do not predict earthquakes in a human sense. They feel them through vibrations, through air pressure, through the unseen currents of the earth. And that feeling, that instinctive awareness, often comes moments or even hours before we detect anything at all. As technology advanced, the study of animal behavior took on new life. In the early 2000s, satellites, sensor, and motion cameras began to track the behavior of wild and domestic animals in earthquake-prone regions. One study in Italy, published after the 2009 L'Aquila earthquake, recorded the movements of cows, dogs, and sheep on local farms. In the hours before the quake, animals became restless. Cows stopped feeding. Dogs barked continuously. Sheep clustered tightly together. Their agitation peaked roughly 20 hours before the earthquake struck. Another study in Japan focused on catfish, believed since ancient times to be sensitive to seismic activity. Researchers placed sensors in ponds and monitored their movement for months. Before small tremors, the fish showed increased swimming speed, agitation, and bursts of erratic motion, suggesting sensitivity to electric or magnetic disturbances caused by rock stress underground. In Germany, scientists set up monitoring stations near Mount Etna and the Apennine Mountains, tracking the behavior of farm animals with high-resolution accelerometers. Again, patterns emerged. Hours before seismic events, animals grew unusually active, as if responding to invisible stimuli. Some researchers propose that these reactions were linked to changes in air ions, tiny charged particles released when rocks under pressure crack before an earthquake. These ions can affect animal nervous systems, especially in sensitive species like dogs, birds, and rodents. Others pointed to the geomagnetic field. Before quake, the stress in rocks releases electromagnetic pulses. Many animals, especially migratory ones, are finely tuned to magnetic orientation. When that magnetic flow is disturbed, their sense of direction falters. They become uneasy, confused, and restless. Sometimes hours before the first tremor, the more scientists observed, the more they began to see that what seemed mystical was, in truth, biological, a quiet conversation between the earth and its creatures. Animals may not consciously know an earthquake is coming, but their bodies, wired for survival and harmony with their surroundings, react to the earth's energy, sometimes with enough clarity to give us a warning we might otherwise miss. Still, science remains cautious. For every story of animals predicting quakes, there are times when nothing happens at all. The challenge is to separate coincidence from true correlation. But perhaps that's the beauty of it. That mystery still lingers. That nature still holds secrets we have not yet learned to measure. In recent years, technology and tradition have begun to meet again. Scientists are now combining satellite data with animal movement tracking to explore what's known as bioseismology, the study of how living organisms respond to seismic activity. In one experiment, researchers fitted cows, sheep, and dogs with GPS collars and accelerometers in earthquake zones of Italy and Japan. they discovered that before major tremors, animals moved far more frequently than usual, sometimes up to 20 hours earlier. Their motion patterns were statistically distinct from normal behavioral fluctuations. These studies have given rise to a new idea that animal activity, when observed collectively, could one day serve as a living early warning system. Instead of relying solely on machines, we might learn to listen again, not just with sensors and algorithms, but through the rhythm of the living world. Imagine it, a network of farms, forests, and sanctuaries, quietly recording animal motion, their unease sending data to scientists in real time. Each creature becomes a node in a vast web of awareness, helping humans sense what the Earth is about to do. We are, in a way, returning to where we began, to listening, to observing, to trusting the natural world. The same wisdom our ancestors held now merges with modern science, forming something beautifully complete. It reminds us that the boundary between intuition and evidence is often thinner than we think. Animals, through millions of years of evolution, have developed senses far more refined than ours, and through their quiet reactions, they tell us truths that instruments are only beginning to capture. Perhaps one day soon, when satellites hum and data flows, we'll see that every bark, every flock of restless birds, every sudden silence in the forest is part of a grand language, the language of the living earth. And perhaps, in learning to hear that language again, we'll remember that we, too, are part of nature's design, that the earth speaks not only through machines, but through every living thing that walks, flies, swims, or burrows upon it. Science may one day prove beyond doubt what animals have always known, that the planet has a pulse, and that those who listen feel it long before it shakes the world above. For most of human history, we were listeners. We walked barefoot on the soil. We watched the skies. We followed the wind and the rhythm of the tides. The world spoke to us constantly, and we understood not through instruments, but through instinct. When storms were near, we could feel it in the heaviness of the air. When animals fell silent, we knew something was wrong. And when the earth trembled, we didn't call it a surprise. We called it a message. But as centuries passed, we built walls of concrete and glass between ourselves and the natural world. We learned to trust screens and forgot to listen to the quiet voice beneath our feet. Yet, even now, the earth has not stopped speaking. It hums with energy, tiny tremors, magnetic shifts, whispers of sound too low for our ears. And there are still those who hear it. The animals, the elephants who feel deep vibrations through the ground, the birds who sense pressure change in the air, the dogs who tilt their heads to frequencies we cannot imagine. They remain connected to the living heartbeat of the planet. What can we learn from them? Perhaps the first lesson is simple: to listen again, to slow down enough to notice what surrounds us. The rustle of leaves before a storm, the restlessness of pets before a tremor, the way the forest grows still just before the rain. These are not coincidences. They are languages, languages older than words. When we learn to observe, we begin to sense, not predict, but understand. We realize that awareness is not only an act of the mind, but of the body, the skin, the breath. Animals remind us that knowledge doesn't always come from books or data. Sometimes it comes from presence, from quiet attention. Their instinct is not magic, but harmony, a finely tuned relationship between themselves and their world. And so, When elephants turn inland before tsunami, or when birds take flight before an earthquake, they are not seeing the future. They are simply listening. Listening to the earth's faintest murmurs, to the stories the ground tells, long before we hear them. Perhaps that is our first lesson. That wisdom begins where silence lives. There's something deeply humbling about realizing how every living thing is connected, from the ants that feel the tremble of soil to the great whales that navigate through low-frequency waves across the ocean's dark expanse. Each creature, in its own way, participates in the orchestra of Earth's awareness. Every wing beat, every movement, adds to the grand rhythm of life. And when we look closely, we begin to see patterns. That elephants in Africa, and frogs in Japan, and dogs in distant villages all respond to the same hidden signals whenever the planet stirs. How beautiful and how strange that the earth sends out one whisper, and thousands of hearts respond. Science calls it sensitivity, but perhaps it is something deeper, a shared pulse, a unity written into every living cell. When animals sense an earthquake, they are not just reacting, they are participating in the earth's expression of balance and change. They move, they flee, they hide, because instinct tells them what our intellect sometimes forgets. That survival lies in listening to nature, not mastering it. In the modern world, we often view animals as separate from us, as if we are observers, standing outside their world, taking notes. But when we truly reflect, we see that we are part of the same fabric, woven from the same atoms, moved by the same gravity, alive under the same trembling ground. The lesson here is not only about earthquakes, but about connection. If animals can sense danger before it arrives, it is because they remain in tune, their instincts unclouded by noise. We, too, still have that ability, deep within the folds of the human brain. In the limbic system, where emotion and survival meet, lies an ancient awareness. We have only forgotten how to access it when we sit in silence. When we breathe deeply and truly listen, we sometimes feel that faint pull, a shift, a hum, a vibration. It is the same rhythm the animals hear. It is the same voice the earth speaks to them in. Maybe the second lesson is this: we have not lost our connection to nature. We have only fallen quiet. As we come to the end of this journey, we might wonder what all these stories truly mean. Are they tales of instinct, of biology, or are they, in their own way, a reminder that the wisdom of nature is far greater than we imagine? In every story of animals sensing earthquakes, there lies not only a scientific mystery, but a spiritual reflection, one that tells us to live more gently upon the earth. For the planet is not a machine. It breathes, it changes, it dreams, and every living being responds. When the ground trembles, it does not warn only humans. It whispers to the elephants. It hums through the forests. It ripples across the seas. And in that shared awareness, life moves as one. Perhaps the greatest lesson from nature is humility, that for all our instruments and predictions, it is still the wild creatures who listen better. That for all our progress, the oldest teachers still walk, crawl, and fly among us, quietly attuned to the pulse of the planet. There is also hope in this understanding, because as we learn from animals, as we rebuild our connection to nature, we rediscover a forgotten part of ourselves, a part that trusts the quiet, that listens to silence, that feels rather than simply knows. Imagine a future where our cities hum not against nature, but with it were the data from satellites, and the patterns of bird migration are studied side by side, where the wisdom of science and the whispers of instinct finally walk hand in hand. When that day comes, perhaps the boundary between human and nature will soften, and we'll remember that we were never separate. The earth does not keep secrets. It sings them through wind, through waves, through every living heart that beats upon it. And so, as the night deepens and the world grows still again, may you carry this thought gently with you, that the same earth that shakes mountains also grows flowers, that the same world that hums with energy also hums within you. Listen softly, trust quietly, and know that you, too, are part of nature's endless harmony. Good night and goodbye for now. Dear listener, may your dreams tonight be calm, curious, and connected to the living, breathing world beneath your feet.